Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Brown, and this is Around the District. Today, we have Racheal Clawson from Save Our Schools here to give us an update on what's happening in Arizona. So, Racheal, how are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. I'm glad that you're here. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I grew up in Tempe. I went to Tempe Elementary Schools and graduated from Tempe Union High School District. Went to college here in Arizona and ended up getting my master's in teaching degree and ended up teaching social studies at my alma mater, Marcos Leniza High School,
Oh,
not too far away. Did that for about 6 years. And then when I was pregnant with my third kiddo, decided to step away from the classroom, which worked out well because the pandemic hit shortly thereafter. And later on that year, got a call from the awesome women at Save Our Schools Arizona and asked if I wanted to join the team. And so I'm currently the digital organizing director for Save Our Schools Arizona. So I do a lot of behind the scenes work with our volunteers, with our event planning, and that sort of thing.
okay. Well, what exactly is Save Our Schools? We see a lot of folks in red shirts
Yeah, yeah,
around the valley, especially during elections,
true.
and
Yeah.
the election season. So,
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about Save Our Schools.
Yeah, so we're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We are statewide and very grassroots driven. Save Our Schools started in 2017 after the state legislature passed the first universal voucher bill at the time. And six parents and educators literally sat around a kitchen table and decided they wanted to run a referendum to try to stop these vouchers. And so they formed Save Our Schools Arizona and were successful at getting the number of signatures to get on the ballot. And in 2018, the voters voted down universal vouchers in Prop 305 by a 2-to-1 margin. And so, despite that, since then, the legislature had continued to push vouchers and expand it slowly. And then 2022, under as sort of the final act of Governor Doug Ducey, passed universal vouchers. And so we, as an organization, try to talk to folks in the community about vouchers and privatization and how we need to fund our public schools, and just try to inform members of the community about that and inform voters. We also help with voter registration, that sort of thing, so that people can exercise their right. And so, yeah, we're very much a grassroots organization, volunteer driven. We are a very small team, but we're very passionate about our work.
So, if this was a result of the universal vouchers, let's talk about that. Let's
Yeah,
get into that
yeah.
because this is a hot topic here in Arizona.
Hmm.
And I was doing some research on it, and it's Empowerment Scholarship account, right? Is what it
Yes.
is, right?
Yeah.
And so it was designed initially to benefit students with disabilities and
Hmm.
or low income students, to my knowledge. Is that right?
Yeah, so it has a very interesting history. So initially, the state of Arizona passed school vouchers in which they said, yes, you can give the money to private schools. But then the Supreme Court said, oh, that breaks or that, uh, hurts that whole idea of separation of church and state. So they created this idea, this sort of workaround called empowerment scholarship accounts, essentially giving state money to the family or the parents who then turn around and spend on private school tuition or homeschool and that sort of thing. And you're absolutely right. It was started to target a very small population, special education kiddos who, have very highly specialized needs and can't necessarily get that in a public school setting. But every year after that initial law was passed, which was about 2012, the legislature kept expanding it to more and more groups. So it included, kids who attended DNF rated schools. Eventually also included kids in foster care, kids in military families, kids, siblings of all of those kids. And so it continued to expand year after year after year. until Governor Ducey tried in 2017 and then eventually in 2022 to make it universal so that any child can get access to that funding and turn around and use it for private school tuition or for homeschooling. And what we've seen with universal vouchers since 2022 is an explosion of folks taking out that money. And 75% of those families who are taking it never attended public school to begin with.
I did see that. So one of the things that I noticed was that it said students who are eligible for public school.
Yes.
And they did not define or take out, or from what I could tell, say if you chose not to go,
right,
then there's no parameters around
yes.
parents choosing not to put their kids in public school, right? It's any student, which is pretty much everybody.
Yes.
Because we're all every kid in this state is eligible to go to public school, right?
Yeah.
And even homeschooling.
Yep.
And I saw that it was 77% of wealthy zip codes. Those are the folks using it the most.
Yes.
And so it's not even filtering down to the students who actually need the benefit.
Yeah, and who the program was initially purported to be created for, right? And what's interesting is that there's very little information that we have about the students who are currently using it, in part because the legislature refuses to pass any sort of measurements of accountability to know who are the kids that are actually benefiting and is it actually helping them. But we do know, zip code wise, that vast majority of the kids, not only in the state of Arizona, but also in states around the country who've passed similar voucher programs, that it is heavily being used by folks who are already doing private school, homeschool, affluent zip codes, typically wider families, and we're essentially subsidizing their private school education, folks who were already attending.
Do you know how much it is per student?
So the base level that they passed in 2022 was $7,000, but
per student.
Yeah, and that can.
So
vary.
if you got 5 kids times 7,000, and you apply for that voucher, and that's the taxpayers, us, that are funding that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and what's interesting too is that a couple of different things, right? If you are somebody who homeschools, you're not necessarily having the same kind of expenses that a school would have, right? Because you are doing it out of your home, right? You're already paying for the internet, those sorts of things. So you don't necessarily have those kinds of expenses. Interestingly enough, and I mean, I guess I say interesting, but to very few people's surprise, once this bill was passed, we then saw private schools increase their tuition costs, right? That whole sort of basic economics came into play. And so even for families who would not have been able to afford private school before, now that $7,000 is only getting them part of the way to actually getting into that private school. And of course, you know, the whole idea around it is folks talk about school choice. The reality is that the schools get to choose. Private schools get to choose and discriminate based on a whole number of factors, and essentially tell kids, no, sorry. So even if you got the money, you had enough to go to the school that you wanted to, that school can still tell you no.
And then, so let me ask you this, because that brings up another question for me. Why are the parents of students in the lower income areas or students with disabilities, why are their parents not applying for these vouchers? Do they not understand how it works, or are they?
I mean, I think there's probably a number of different reasons. I mean, generally speaking, right, if the wealthier you are, the more likely you are to sort of know how to work the various systems to your benefit, right? And not to mention, there's a number of organizations out there who really try to advertise to private school and homeschool families, hey, there's this money out there. In fact, I don't know if you know Craig Harris, but he's a reporter for ABC 15. He just reported on a story in which he attended essentially a virtual webinar by one of these organizations to say, hey, you can, if you go on travel, you can use that money for.
I saw that on your website.
Right. You can use that money for SeaWorld tickets. You're going to Mexico. Oh, you can use some of that money to, find something that's educational and, you can adopt it to fit a curriculum and essentially help to pay for your vacations.
Which is not the intent
Right.
of a school voucher, right?
No. The intent of school vouchers is really to help kids who were not getting what it is that they needed out of the public school system.
Can you give some examples of what that looks like? What it would have been intended for?
How the funding comes out is here in the state of Arizona. In all states across the country, the vast majority of your education funding is coming from the state. So you're looking at 40%, 40+% of the whole state's general fund coming or going to education. However, when you have something like vouchers, you're essentially taking money out of that general fund, right? So that size of the pie shrinks, which means there's less funding there for public schools to then take and divvy up, right? And so
Wait, hang on.
Yeah.
So does that impact schools staying funded, which means that enrollment down in schools and school closing, like in the Kyrene School District, where 9 schools are likely to close next year, are the vouchers a part of or can be contributing?
Absolutely, they are contributing.
Okay.
Because in Kyrene School District, you have, again, students who were previously not attending public school now taking out money that could have potentially then been going to their public schools. So Kyrene School District is losing $12 million a year.
In funding. Taxpayer money.
From vouchers.
Our money.
Yes. And so you
live in Kyrene School District.
So you do have issues like declining enrollment, sure, but you also have the fact that the whole size of the pie is shrinking. And so what potentially we see happening with these school closures, which is horrific and so sad, and our hope is that districts can find other solutions, but besides closing schools, if that's a possibility. But even when we're saving money, we still find that class sizes are getting bigger, right? And that the quality of education itself isn't necessarily getting better. And so it is just harmful to our public schools and to our communities. When a school closes, it doesn't matter where it is, but it is so harmful to the community. And to be honest, it's part of what we see happening around the country for privatization to occur. Folks then want to sell those empty buildings to private schools, to other businesses. And once that is gone, it's gone. It's really difficult to bring something like that back.
Yeah. I don't want to get started on the current person in office who wants to close the Department of Education. But as educators, like I'm an educator, you're an educator.
Yeah.
We know if one school closes, those kids that are attending have to go somewhere. To your point, the classroom sizes gets bigger, right? And if they pull money away and give it to people who actually can afford to pay for things on their own,
right?
That doesn't help our society as a whole. Our city, our communities are severely impacted. And I don't think people realize that, this is our money that Arizona state legislators are saying, we don't care if we give it to the rich kids or their families. Yeah. But this is our money. We pay their salaries. Like, what do we do? Like, what does your organization do? Because to fight back on that, like, what are you guys trying to do?
Sure. So I think for one is really just educating people about what is happening. And I think that Arizonans who are paying attention very much know that the impact of vouchers in Arizona has been really harmful. And so now we see something at the national level, and we have lots of Arizonans sort of like waving their arms, telling people, no, this isn't what you want. Trust us. So educating people about what's happening is something that we do. We hold presentations. We to various organizations and groups. I mean, we'll do presentations out of people's homes just to say, hey, invite your neighbors and we'll give you the information. From there, like I said, we also do help with voter registration. There's been a big concern about voters potentially being purged from the voter rolls. So
Yeah.
we've been making calls all summer to folks who are potentially at risk of being purged from the voter rolls and say, hey, how about you check your voter registration? And we also then knock doors. We're doing that right now, despite the fact that it's 110 degrees outside. We're knocking doors around the state to talk to voters to say, hey, how do you feel about public schools? And potentially, can we give them more information about what's occurring to really let people know like they have the power if they choose to use it, whether that's their voice at the school board meeting or voting at the ballot box.
Right.
So,
Well, folks, we have the power and it's our money.
Yep.
We should be able to say where that money goes, right?
Absolutely.
So stay with us where we will come back with Racheal for part 2 and more discussion around Save Our Schools. So right now I'm Nicole Brown and this is Around the District.